We are once again at one of those hinge moments of history. Our old relationship with the United States, a relationship based on steadily increasing integration, is over.
To these ends, the Canada-EU summit later this month will be more important than ever. And Canada will arrive at this summit with a plan to lead, with new investments to build our strength in service of our values.
For those of you who don't know, this is Mark Carney, the new Prime Minister of Canada, a globalist banker straight out of the World Economic Forum, and he seems to want Canada to join the European Union as some sort of offensive against the United States. This man literally wrote a book about how to use the climate change agenda to destroy energy development in Western democracies, all while giving China, the world's largest polluter, a complete free pass. His goal? Block Canadian pipelines, kill jobs in Alberta and Saskatchewan, and cozy up to Beijing. He continues to show the world what side he's on. Around the world, countries are picking a lane. Either you stand with the United States and real democracy, or you cozy up to communist China. And Carney? Well, he seems to be picking Beijing. Meanwhile, all America's been asking is for Canada to carry its weight, pay its fair share for defense, stop putting tariffs on U.S. products unless they want America putting tariffs on their products. But instead of fixing these issues, Carney wants to move Canada farther away from the United States and towards the European Union and China.
Canada can work towards a new international set of partnerships that are more secure, prosperous, just, and free. We can pursue deeper alliances with stable democracies who share our interests, values, principles, and history. And we can help create a new era of integration between like-minded partners that maximizes mutual support over mutual dependency. A new system of cooperation that promotes greater resilience rather than merely a quest for greater efficiency. With the fall of the Berlin Wall, the United States became the global hegemon. Its gravitational pull on Canada, always strong, became virtually irresistible and made the U.S. our closest ally and dominant trading partner. But now, the United States is beginning to monetize its hegemony, charging for access to its markets and reducing its relative contribution to our collective security. In parallel, the world's trade routes, allegiances, energy systems, and even intelligence itself are being rewired. Rising great powers are now in strategic competition with America. A new imperialism threatens. Middle powers must compete for interests and attention, knowing that if they're not at the table, they're on the menu. Indeed, the threats that Canada faces are multiplying. In parallel, we are actively seeking to strengthen transatlantic security, particularly by becoming a participant in Rearm Europe. This will help diversify our military suppliers with reliable European partners and integrate the Canadian defense industry as full participants in 150 billion euros of Europe's rearmament program.
There's this video from the Canadian Parliament of a new Conservative MP named Matt Strauss, who actually stood up in Parliament and said what a lot of Canadians have been feeling for years. After 10 years of governments that talk a big game about democracy, what we've really seen in Canada is like a police state. Remember when the Canadian truckers got arrested just for protesting? Or when police knocked over elderly folks in wheelchairs? When the government froze bank accounts of people who donated to a peaceful protest? Yeah, all of that really happened. All while regular folks were told to stay home, not visit family, not even go to church, while the politicians were out throwing parties and doing whatever they wanted. They told us to stay home because it was for our safety, all for a virus that most people survived. Strauss finally called it out, said it plain and simple, right in Parliament. Let's watch.
When farming is socialized, you get bread lines, and people died of starvation while standing in Soviet bread lines. When healthcare is socialized, you get lines in the ER, and I promise you people have died and are dying in waiting rooms, in emergency rooms across this country right now. You might think that I'm being overwrought and seeing the ghost of communism where it does not exist. However, I would note that we just spent 10 years with a Prime Minister who, when asked which government in the world he most admired, stated the basic dictatorship of the Communist Chinese Party. A Prime Minister who released a statement lionizing brutal communist dictator Fidel Castro when he died. A Prime Minister whose answer to every social problem, dental care, child care, pharmacare, school lunch, climate change, what have you, was always more socialism, more central planning, more top-down pronouncements, less freedom to make choices for yourself and your family. The zenith of all this top-down control came during the pandemic. The members opposite went full communism. They locked Canadians down in their homes. They ruined weddings, funerals, Easters, proms, and Christmases. They closed the borders. They kept mothers from children and brothers from sisters. They deprived this House of its ancient rights. They spent $600 billion of taxpayer money with no budget, doubled our national debt to pay healthy 16-year-olds to sit in their basement. Then, as now, they did all this in the name of crisis management. Physicians, professors, and journalists who spoke out against these abuses were hunted down. They had their licenses and their jobs threatened. I know this because it happened to me. At Queen's University, where I taught, Jane Philpott herself, one of the only two cabinet ministers to speak truth to Justin Trudeau's power, informed me in her dean's office that the reason the administration had to harass me was that I criticized the government. That is a direct quote. Of course, the Prime Minister and his commissars were immune from all of this. He could attend gatherings of greater than 5 if it suited his political purposes, like a George Floyd protest in Ottawa, and he did. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals claimed unto themselves the power to censor the news, to violate free speech in the name of fighting misinformation, while they themselves promoted misinformation. They gave luxurious contracts to their friends in academia to promote their misinformation. They gave hundreds of millions of dollars to mainstream media to promote government narratives. These three institutions, government, media, and the academy, have important roles in society to regulate each other. But under the federal government's bribery scheme, they have ended up, like the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, out to sea, stewing in each other's bathwater. When ordinary, everyday Canadians came here to Ottawa complaining that their charter rights to bodily autonomy, assembly, and free movement were being violated, every member of the Liberal caucus voted to trample their rights further. They violated Section 2 and Section 8 of the Charter in imposing the Emergencies Measures Act. It is not me saying that, but Justice Mosley of the Federal Court. They trampled on the charter rights they claimed to revere, and then they laughed about it. The current Minister of Transport, in particular, laughed about it, Mr. Speaker. If we cannot speak truth to their power, everything will continue to break. And that is why I had to come here, Mr. Speaker. I refuse to be a cog in their broken machine. I hope it is the case that this darkness left with the former Prime Minister, and I beseech the new Prime Minister to turn to the light, to defend those values enshrined in our anthem, truth, strength, and freedom. I read his book, Mr. Speaker. The book was called Values, and freedom, I'm sorry to say, was not among those therein discussed. The repackaging of their socialist plans in bankers' socks might fool some of the people some of the time, but I will tell you who it is not fooling. It is not fooling the multicultural communities in Kitchener-South Hespeler, the Romanians, Albanians, Polish, Ukrainians, Serbians, Croatians, Lithuanians, Venezuelans, Chinese, Somalis, and Ethiopians with lived experience of socialism who know what they are seeing and don't like it and sent me here. They came here for freedom, not just any freedom, but our specific embodied Canadian freedoms. These freedoms are ours, but they are not merely ours, and they are certainly not ours to discard. They were fought for at Runnymede and encoded in the Magna Carta. They were fought for in the English Civil Wars, the Glorious Revolution, and enshrined in the Declaration of Right. They were fought for in the World Wars and enacted in Diefenbaker's Bill of Rights. They were fought for by both my grandfathers, by all of our grandparents, and embodied in all of us here. So the answer to the question of why I came here, I'm here to speak truth to power on behalf of the people of Kitchener-South Hespeler. I will be happy to go back to being a physician and professor once I can practice in truth and freedom again, once we can all live in truth and freedom again. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may God keep our land glorious and free.